titles, 93, 95, 97, 99, and then the Olympic titles of 96 and 2000. So we know that, and then of course he's considered his future, and he says, okay, I may not have the speed anymore over 10,000 meters, and I want to concentrate on the marathon. And he is the fastest man in the world. He holds the world best, we'll call them, because the courses are so different, and the statisticians will always say, let's call it a world best rather than the world record. And of course this season he has the best two marathon times. Tim, you mentioned the Dubai record earlier on. Wow, look at this.
These are the leading women coming through 10 kilometres in 32:48 unofficially. 32:48 there, and we're just checking our charts to give you an indication of what that sort of schedule gives them.
2:18.
They are indeed on under 2:20 tempo. It's very quick indeed.
Yep.
This would be a course record indeed if they could run anything like 2:18 here, and it's Tafa who seems to be doing the leading there. That's Askale Tafa Magasa of Ethiopia. Well, it would make her the third fastest woman in history, I think, behind Paula Radcliffe and Catherine Dereba. I wonder if they'll be able to hang on to that sort of tempo or not. It's very, very quick indeed. But it is a big help for those ladies when they have a number of male athletes around them, of course. Well,
that's a point I was just going to make, that it is a different endeavour rather than a female-only race. And that split would give them, you're right, under 2 hours 20. We give them around about 2:19, perhaps inside 2:19. But whether they can maintain that sort of pace. But obviously, from what we've seen so far, conditions absolutely superb. They're the distance coming up on the screen below. 12 kilometres coming up, and this is quick, very, very quick indeed. But you know, it's deceptive, isn't it? It looks to be floating along, and I know that the pacemakers have had a little chat. They've had a little chat with each other to decide, because I noticed that earlier. I wonder if we are going too quick. They must have spoken to Gebrselassie about that, or would they, Tim?
Well, you'd hope so. I mean, you know, at this sort of tempo, it might not be a chit-chat conversational pace, but certainly they can talk to each other. They're not going flat out like in a middle-distance race where you are almost gasping for air. So you would hope that they are paying attention to the schedule that is required. And indeed, there are people on the sidelines too, coaches and managers and other people with the knowledge to know whether or not they're going too quick. Mobile phones have changed the world, of course, and the pacemakers, you often see them getting advice from the sidelines. You see people screaming at them, telling them to make those adjustments. Here they go at the easternmost point of the course. This is Strasburger Platz, this roundabout. They take it round the outside there and then head due south away from the roundabout.
Yeah, they go down Lichtenberger Strasse to the 13th kilometre, just going through 12. They've just been through 12k and heading now towards 13, and then they'll take a right turn. But generally there's some long straight parts to this, so they don't have the rhythm disruption of sudden turns as you get in some marathon courses. But just over 12 kilometres gone then, 35:38 the time, so it is very, very quick.
Which means obviously almost exactly 30 kilometres to go. 42.2 kilometres will be the full distance, so 30 kilometres to go, that's around 17 miles. Gebrselassie has ahead of him at this tempo, or something close to it. The 15-kilometre marker is the next point where we'll get a really clear indication of the pace they're moving at. We know already that through 5 kilometres and 10 kilometres they're going much quicker than last year, and in effect that means for Gebrselassie wishes they're going too quick, because he said he wants to replicate the first half of last year when they went through halfway in 62 minutes 29 seconds. At the moment they're going at something like almost a minute quicker than that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at you mentioned the Dubai marathon earlier on, but I was just looking at the 10k split there, 28:39 for 10k in Dubai, and that would have given him 2 hours and 53 seconds overall. So and at halfway, 1 hour 1.27, so they're astonishing times, they really were. And of course he did suffer a little bit towards the end, didn't he?
Well, do you know, it was a point of discussion for many years as to how to spread your energies through a marathon. But over this last decade or so, over the last 10 years, people are becoming more and more wizened to the facts, that you have to run negative splits in a marathon. You have to get to halfway in pretty good order, feeling strong, feeling you've got plenty in reserve. And I think Gebrselassie in Dubai last January didn't just overcook it, he really did throw caution to the wind and blast through the first 10k and then 20k and halfway, and it was too quick, and he must have known that at the time actually. But I suppose once he'd committed himself, Stuart, and reached sort of halfway, then there was no turning back. You can't regain that extra minute or so that you've spent.
Well, you know, just to think back to the London Marathon last April, Martin Lell, Samuel Wanjiru went through 30 kilometres in 1:28.29. That was 27 seconds faster than Gebrselassie's Berlin split from 2007. Now, if you take that into account, and Gebrselassie thinks, hang on a minute, London is nowhere near as good a course in terms of speed, then surely I can do that, and he wants to try and put it out of sight. And one would suspect that if Lell and Wanjiru were around here, then it would be a very different encounter of the first kind. One would suspect that, but that's an interesting comparison to make, you know, on the London course to be so quick. And they only fell outside of that record because it rained and the conditions deteriorated.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, what you do get in London, of course, with the amount of money that David Bedford, the race director, has got to spend, is fields of the very highest calibre with real strength in depth. So you get not just pacemakers and other athletes through to halfway and 25 kilometres and perhaps 30 kilometres, but you get a real race on your hands in the latter stages through 35 kilometres and 40 kilometres. How many times have you seen athletes racing against each other, ploughing along the embankment towards Big Ben and then turning right with about a mile and a half to go towards Buckingham Palace? And that makes the difference. Funnily enough, though, Stuart, of course, last year Gebrselassie accelerated when the pacemakers dropped out at 30 kilometres here in Berlin. His 35th kilometre last year was his fastest of the race. He went through his 35th kilometre with a 2:50 split. Now that's almost track race